Hey everybody, JC here. Welcome to Simple Builds Volume 5, Building Your Own Launchpad. Now what I have on the workbench now is a PortaPad 2 from Estes. This is a typical launchpad you'd get if you bought a starter kit. This one came out of a Riptide starter kit. So it essentially is broken into 4 parts. So you have your support structure, which is your legs here, these 3 legs. And then you have your rod holder. Okay, and the legs attached to it. Then you have your blast deflector plate. Now, this is just a picture of it because I've modified the original one. And you have your standoff. And then you also have your launch rod. Now, this came with a 3-piece launch rod. This is just one part of it, just for illustration. And then you have your launch rod cap. It's a little windsock and a little thing so you don't poke your eye out. So, this is a perfectly good launch pad. It works just fine. It has some advantages. It's very stable. It's got nice wide legs. Like I said, they just slide into the rod holder, such as such. Rod holder, nice. It holds 8 or 3/16" rods. You just loosen it up and you can rotate it around. So you do have some ability to change the direction of the rod. Okay, then this fits down over the rod and this fits down over this. And then you can put this on top, which will show you which way the wind's blowing and prevent you from poking your eye out. Okay, so it's not a bad launch pad, but for me it has a few deficiencies which kind of get on my nerves. One is it's extremely low to the ground. Okay, I'm over 6 feet tall, and so every time I have to mess with my rocket, I essentially have to get down on my knees to do it, which I find pain. Also, the reason you have to have one of these is because the rod is below your eye height. So it's got a very short launch rod. The other thing is this blast deflector plate is very thin metal and it gets warped and damaged very easily. And the standoff is plastic, okay? And you're gonna have hot gases blasting down on it repeatedly. So those are things that I would like to fix on a new launch pad. And I'm gonna tell you, this is what you need to get. This is how you can make it. It's really simple. Now, I will tell you right now, it is more expensive. This retail is about $26 from Estes. And to build the one I'm going to talk about is probably going to cost you closer to $40. But it's a lot more flexible, and in the long run, it's going to last a lot longer. Okay, so when I come back, I'll have the parts for my launch pad, and we'll talk about what it takes to build it. Okay, so I'm back with all the parts for your new launch pad. So I'm sure that everyone figured out, based on previous videos of mine, that it was going to be based on a tripod. Okay, so the tripod essentially replaces the legs that were on the previous one. Okay, now you need a rod holder. Okay, that was that plastic part. So this is your new rod holder. This fits right on top of the tripod, and it can hold a 3/16" or an 1/8" rod. Now, I made a video a while back. It was my first Simple Builds video that said how to make this. Okay. It's pretty easy. I'll put a link in the description. Now, this was not my idea. I saw this on a video by Ron's Rockets, and I couldn't figure out what it was at first. Then they had a close-up, and I said, oh, that's a coupler nut and a thumb screw. And so there they are right there. These I happen to buy at the Home Depot, but I'm sure they're available at Lowe's, Ace Hardware, all kinds of other places. So this is a 1/4 inch by 20, which is what fits on top of this tripod. And this thumb screw is just, it seemed like the appropriate size. So these unfortunately come in packs of 3 and 4, so I believe they were less than $5 each. So you can build 3 of these things for less than $10, and you have an extra thumb screw if you happen to lose it. Okay. So the next thing is your blast deflector plate. So the old one, well, this was the old one. It just cannot take the pressure. It's very thin. It's steel-ish. but it's just not really the quality you're looking for if you're going to be launching E motors. I mean, these burn marks were caused by D motors. So what I substituted is this. This is a cover plate for an outlet. It's thick steel, galvanized. My current one has probably 50 or 60 E launches on it, and the bottom looks just like that. The top, of course, is all mucked up. And the last thing is your launch rod. So you can have 3/16 or you have an 1/8. Now, the launch rod that came with the original PortaPad 2, that's okay, but here's the problem with it. It's got a couple of joints in it. Even if you buy one of the newer ones, it's got one joint in it, it's still got a joint. Now, the problem with that is it's almost impossible to get that joint perfectly smooth, and you can have things hang up on it. Plus, it's pretty short, 3 feet. You can go down to Lowe's, Home Depot, or other places and buy a 4-foot piece of steel rod. Now, the problem you have with those is they're not stainless steel. So my personal recommendation is to go to Grainger or something else that sells the same kind of thing and buy a 6-foot stainless steel rod, which you can then cut off to whatever length you want. These are the remnants of my cutoffs. I cut my rods off at 4.5 feet. And that gives me a few inches at the bottom to put it into the rod holder, etc. Give me a 4-foot rod. So that's all the parts that you actually need. So there's the same 4 basic parts that you had with the PortaPad 2. And you'll notice that I do have some other things over here. So I have a washer. Now what I do is after I drill my hole, I have fixed that right there. Okay, it provides extra support to the weakest part, which is where the hole is. Now, you don't have to do this. I did it on the other one because it had a big, gigantic hole. And so I just, it's good. Okay, so this is a drywall anchor. What I use this for is I use it for a standoff. Okay, so I take the bolt out, obviously. I scrunch it down in my vise till it's about 1 inch high. And then I JB weld it to the bottom, just like that. Now, if you're going to use this, make sure you size it so that a 3/16 inch rod will fit through it. Okay. Now, totally optional, of course. You can just have this plate sit right on top of this. I don't like that because if I have to do anything with this, it's hard to reach in there and get into it. See? Okay. Couple other things. This is a ball mount. Now, with this type of tripod, you've got 2 adjustments. Okay, so you've got this adjustment here where you can do it like that, and then you can manually bend it like that. But it's kind of awkward, as you can see. Okay, with the ball mount, this just screws right onto the top of the plate here. Oh, and by the way, I didn't mention this earlier, but I like this tripod because this plate is removable. You can get spares, so you can have a couple of different setups and just pop in a new one without having to unscrew anything. Very easy. So you can just put this on top of that, and then you put this on top of that, right? And here's the cool part. You loosen this up, you can point that in any direction very easily. Okay, this is about, I think it was $5 on Amazon. That's been a while since I got it, so it might be more now, but very simple to use. And the last 2 things I have here are these little deals. Now, any RC people out there probably know that these are called collars, and they are used to limit motion. And what I do is I put mine on the launch rod near the bottom. Oops. The funny thing is I fit this before I started this video, and now, it's like anything, right? Anytime you do something on video, there we go. Okay. I could get that out, but I don't really care that much. So let's say the rest of your rod extends up that direction. You can put this here as a stop, put this here like this, right? And so then your rocket will only come down to here. You can put something off of this. You could even put another washer on the end of it, right? Or you could put a clothespin or something. It's just something I put on there to limit downward motion. And it also, if I'm using it with the plate, it keeps the blastifleca plate from falling off. So this is for 3/16, and I have one for an 1/8 also. Okay, I bought these One of them I already had. The other one I think I bought online for a few bucks. So these are all the things. Now you have to make this. And this was the subject of my first simple build video. So it's really easy to make. It's one of those things that, basically you drill a hole, tap it, put the thumb screw in. The video goes through everything, every step, and so I'll put a link in the description to that. Okay. The other thing you have to do is drill a hole in this. Now, depending on what size rod you're going to use, you could drill a different hole in here. I'd recommend, sizing everything for 3/16. So make sure your washer, if you're going to use one, fits 3/16. Your collar should be for whichever size rod you actually use. And then when you drill the hole, 3/16. Now to drill a hole, it's relatively simple. All you have to do is just take a straight edge and Sharpie, pencil, whatever, and then just draw approximately a diagonal line here, and then turn it around, draw another diagonal line. Okay, now it doesn't have to be perfect. This is like horseshoes, close is good enough. Okay, now that's where we're going to drill the hole. Now once you drill a hole, and when I do this on the video, I'll show you guys, you need to deburr the hole, and then if you're going to mount this, you're going to want to put this right here, mark around it, and then scuff up this and scuff up this with your Dremel so that when you use JB Weld, put it on there. Same thing. Once you compress this, and we'll put it on the back, that, obviously you have to take that off, scuff everything up, build JB Weld, let it all dry, then you put it together, boom, you have a launch pad. It's really simple to make. Total cost, let's see, the PortaPad 2 costs about $26 retail, I believe. And this is going to cost you more. So this is about $20. Your launch rod is about, and you can use the original one if you want, but I recommend getting a longer one. This will be about another 10 bucks. These cost, one of them doesn't cost that much, but you have to buy a pack of things, parts. So you're talking another 10 bucks there. And this is going to cost $1.50. This is going to cost about $5. And then one of these, depending on what you can just use, anything else you want. You could put a bolt around there, or you could put an old motor. There's all kinds of things. I just happened to have one, stuck it on there, liked it. So you're talking less than $40 for the whole thing. Yes, that is more than your PortaPad 2. But I will tell you that by simply taking this plate off and collapsing these things, you're done. You don't have to struggle with the plastic there. Plus, it sits up higher. You don't have to worry about poking your eye out. So I think this thing has, other than cost, this thing has every advantage over the other ones. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to drill a hole. We're going to attach some stuff. And then after that, we'll just put it together, and then we will have a new launch pad. Hey everybody, we're out here in the garage and we're going to go ahead and prep our blast deflector. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach this, and I'm going to scrunch this and attach it as well. So before I drill the hole, I'm going to go ahead and mark it with the surround or the outline of this, so that when I use my Dremel, I'll know where to grind on it, and I can use the Dremel at the same time to give any flash around the hole. Then after I drill the hole, I'll go on the other side and I'll do the same thing with this, and I'll rough this up as well. So that way the JB Weld I'm going to use will adhere very well. One thing to know about when you're using JB Weld, at least this particular kind, do not clamp the parts together. Right? You don't want to squish out all of the material. Just get it on there, nice thin but good coverage coat, and just press it down with your fingers a little bit and just leave it. And then it'll make a nice firm connection. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this. So I'm just centering this on the X, drawing a circle around it. Because it's really important, if you're going to do this, and you use JB Weld, you have to make sure that you rough up the metal. So I'll be roughing up the bottom of this washer, Looks like it's a little roughed up already. Interesting. And then I'll rough up the bottom of this, and then I'll rough this up after I drill the hole out. So, all right, now I'm not going to bother to show that part because it's just a bunch of noise. And I'm sure you'll appreciate that. But then once I get everything prepped, I will show you the connecting, gluing together, all that good stuff. Okay, so one of the things that we want to do here to make this standoff is to compress this drywall anchor in my vise. And so what I'm going to do, this thing is about 2 inches long. So I'm just going to stick it in my vise here. And see here, it's currently, yes, 2 inches long. And it's going to end up being slightly over 1 inch long. And we're just going to, use the power of the vise to compress it. This is exactly what would happen if you were to put it in your wall and screw in the screw. So we want to compress it down until these little leaves are almost touching the edge of the vise. So this should be square. So that's about right there. If we measure that, you can see that it's like 1 inch and 1/8. So we'll be attaching this on the back of, or bottom, I guess I should say, of our launch deflector plate. Okay, so we've got our hole drilled, and we've got our mark on the back. It's approximate for this, right? So this is going to go on the front, and so I'll use a pair of pliers to hold on to this so that I don't burn my fingers because it will get hot. And the same thing with here, I'll just grab it up here somewhere. So the idea is, like I said, you're going to rough this up, and this also, if you'll notice from the drilling, it has some flash right there, which you'd have to remove anyway. So, all right, well, I said I'm going to do this off camera so you don't have to hear the grinding noises. And in case you're wondering, yes, I will be wearing safety goggles. Okay, so before we start epoxying anything, it's very important to make sure that everything fits. So I have a piece of 3/16" launch rod. Okay, fits through the hole without any problems. Fits through the hole in the washer. And it fits through the hole in the standoff. Okay. Now what I'll do is once I get these all epoxied on, then I'll run the rod through there and make sure that everything's perfectly lined up. And we'll end up sitting it upside down like this. You can see where I've ground away, everything needs to be ground up. And this will be mounted right there, just like that. So, all right, so I guess it's time to get to the epoxying. Now, as I said before, I'm using the JB Weld steel. And I'm going to mix up a bunch of it because guess what? You can just throw it away when you're done. That should be enough. And to tell you the truth, I'm not even sure what the working time is on this. I'd say it's at least 5 minutes. So I'll always, put out approximately the same amount of each one. That seems about right. And the thing that's nice about this is it's really easy to tell when you've got it all mixed up because it's a uniform gray color. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the plate itself. And, it's like anything. Neatness, not super important. One thing I will say, though, is try not to get it on anything, because guess what? This stuff stains and does not come out. So if you get it on something that's light colored, It's going to have a dark blop on it for the rest of its life. Okay, that's about... what you're looking for is, it doesn't have to be perfectly even coverage because you're going to squish it down a little bit. But you want to make sure that you're going to be covering the entire area as much as possible. So if there's little blobs here and there, that's okay. And if it goes down into the hole, that's also okay, because we're going to be using a piece of launch rod to clear it out there. Okay. So like I said, I'm just using moderate finger pressure. Okay, that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing for the standoff. And like anything you're gluing together, you don't have to put globs and globs and globs on there, just as long as you get good coverage. Like I said, if you get it in a hole, that's okay. We're going to run the launch rod through it. This needs to be approximately correct. Okay, I'll take a piece of launch rod. Run it through there. Oh, I got some on my fingers, of course, because hey, if you're going to glue something, you should get it on your fingers. Okay. Now, the really good thing about this stuff is that once you've got it all in there, it's all done, you can drill it out. So you see, I got a little bit still in the hole, but that's okay. All right, there we go. That looks good. And it's, like any time you glue anything, it's going to make kind of a mess, but that's okay. That's why you have paper towels, which I don't have one right here. Yeah, see, I'm not nearly as prepared as Kevin. He always has paper towels right there with him. I usually do, but they're in the garage, so all right. So then, of course, clean up as much as possible. Try not to get on everything. And then I'll wait for about 24 hours before I do anything with that. And you can look down there, double check that looks pretty good. And then the last thing I'll do after it's hardened is I'll run the drill through there just to make sure that everything is good to go. And then really, assuming that you've already made your rod holder, one of these, then you are ready to assemble your launch rod. And it's really basic. We'll talk about putting the collar on there too. If you choose to do that, I'll tell you why I do, where I do it. In fact, we'll tell you what. Since we're waiting for this to harden, we'll go ahead and do that next. Okay, as I just mentioned, we're going to talk about putting these collars onto your launch rod. So here's one of my actual launch rods, and there's the collar down near one end. Now, these launch rods, if you buy one from Grainger, it's 6 feet long, and I cut it off at 4.5 feet. So we run the tape down to the other end. Okay, and then you'll see that it is indeed, oh, I can't see that. You can almost see that it is, there you go, 54 inches long. Okay. Now what I do is I mark the rod 5 inches from one end, and then that's where I'm going to put the collar. Now the reason I do that is so that this end is going to go down into the rod holder, and the blast reflector plate is going to be down here. And so then this will elevate any rocket or anything else I have on here. And you can put a little piece of metal or a washer or a clothespin or something to do that. Okay. Now, putting them on is real simple. You just would mark on here slide it on to the appropriate distance, and then you'd use one of these, is an Allen wrench. Now on the 3/16 inch ones, it uses a 5/64. It just goes right in there, set screw, tighten it down. Now be careful not to strip it, or else it's really hard to get out. Now, sometimes the set screws will be, I don't know, not good quality, and you may want to replace them. So I like to put stainless steel ones in some of mine. Now this 1/8 inch one has got a pretty nice one, even though it's just regular metal. And it uses a 1/16. So same process, you put it on to whatever distance you want it, tighten it down. Okay, totally optional. I just find it handy because when you've got the rod holder on one end, you've got the rod holder down here, and you've got this up here, and you've got the blast deflector plate in the middle, it never falls off when you take the rod off. All right, so easy to do. I find them very handy. You know, even though this has got dunked on it, I can take a wipe and that'll come right off. Okay, so. All right, so as I said, we're just going to be waiting for the JB Weld to harden, and then assuming you've made your rod holder, we can move on to actually building your launch pad. Okay, so it's the next day, and now we have our blast deflector plate. It's all dried up, good, nice and solid. And now we can go ahead and start constructing our launch pad. So the simplest thing to do is to take this, remove the plate, okay, and then decide what we're going to mount on here. Are we going to mount this on here first, just use that, or do we want to use the ball mount? If you want to use the ball mount, just screw it on there. Okay. Then we can adjust it any way we want. Then we can mount this on top of it. So the way this works is the thumb screw goes on the top part. Okay. And then now, I'll just use one of these. These are just short pieces that I cut off the other ones, set at the appropriate height. So the first thing I'm going to do is you want to thread your blast deflector plate, which I already drilled that out to make sure it was good. Okay. Then put it in here. Tighten up the thumb screw. You might want to use some pliers, unless you're going to be taking it on and off. And then there you go. So then we would take this, and we would mount it on the plate. Mount the plate onto the, and there's our assembled launch pad. We have our launch rod with our stop. We have our blast deflector plate. We have our ball mount, which allows us to rotate in any direction. And then we have our tripod, which is our stand. So I'll set it up on the floor, let you take a look at it, and I'll show you how easy it is to swap out with another rod. Okay, so there's our launch pad ready to go. If you want to swap out the 3/16 rod for a 1/8 inch rod, and I'm not using the full length one because it whacks into things. There's two ways you can do it. If you have another base plate right there, you could simply remove that and just pull off the whole thing. But you'd have to have another complete setup. If you just want to swap the rod out, you just go down to the rod holder, loosen it up, lift up the rod and the blast deflector plate, pull the blast deflector plate off, put the other rod into it. So with this, we slide this into the rod holder. Just tighten it up, and there you go. So you can build blast deflector plates that are set for a 1/8 inch and one for 3/16, or you can just use the same one for both of them. It doesn't really matter. I have two of them. I have one set up for each size. So that's everything. Building your own launch pad. It's really simple. I included some optional items in case you want to do that. Whole thing costs about 40 bucks. But like I said, it's pretty easy to use. You'll never poke yourself in the eye again. And you won't have to get down on your knees to change your rocket or mess around with it. So, hope you guys enjoyed this. And hope you get a lot of good use out of it.